Evening. So, first things first, big thank you to the, so far 2,600 views I've had on episode one of this. This is the second part of the live reading of Underdogs. And I'm going to talk not for very long, but just for long enough for people to actually tune in. And I'll start off the way that I normally start these videos. If you're watching this at 6 p.m. London time, which I believe is 2 p.m. New York time, take us 7 hours, 11 a.m. California time, and I have to admit I have no idea what time it is in Australia, and I really should, but probably the midnight. Oh yeah, 4 a.m. I think it was. So yeah, a follower tuned in at 4 a.m. specifically to listen to the opening chapter of Underdogs, which was a massive compliment, really. So thank you. But anyway, I digress. It is currently 6 p.m. on, what day is it? Thursday? Yeah, Thursday evening. If you're watching this and it's currently not that time, then you're not watching a live video, so please don't be offended if I don't answer your comments. In the meantime, do feel free to leave comments, and as the description says, I will answer them intermittently between chapters. Today is going to be chapters 3 and 4, and yeah, very brief. Just to recall the first two chapters. The story begins with main character Ewan going through an abandoned village on the way to an ammunition raid with a couple of people, including his best friend Charlie, and they come across. So I'm just trying to do two things at once here. I'm trying to load up this video on my laptop just so I can keep an eye on the comments as well. But yeah, here we go. Anyway, the mission's interrupted when they come across a young woman running across the abandoned village, chased by an assassin called Keith Tyler, who hangs around just long enough during a standoff to tell the people that that this person's really important, but he doesn't have time to explain why before Shannon, and her name turns out to be Shannon, stabs him to death quite horribly. They bring her back to Spitfire's Rise, which is their hidden countryside lair or hideout or whatever you want to call it, and Shannon is introduced to a bunch of characters, including Kate, 16-year-old autistic girl with enormous anxiety, but she is one of my favourite characters in the whole series, and Joseph McCormick, who's basically kind of granddad figure / leader. Anyway, unless anyone has any specific questions, I'm not going to talk for too much longer before starting this, but I can see plenty of names I recognise watching this already. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the next two chapters. So, Underdogs, Chapter 3. So you admit an attack would be stupid. Oh, that's the extra thing that I forgot to say. At the end of Chapter 2, it's revealed, two things are revealed actually. Number one, Keith Tyler was taking Shannon to this disused NHS health centre, which was the headquarters of someone called Lieutenant Lambourne. It's completely unknown what for and who he is and so on, but there's something there, and the general idea is that they need to attack this place. And secondly, there were some sheets of paper in Shannon's pocket revealing that there is a list in New London of all the Underdogs, all their names and so on, so they are no longer an anonymous force in the countryside. They are known to the villains, but they don't know how. So here we go, Chapter 3. So you admit an attack would be stupid. Doing nothing's even stupider, said Ewan. Yeah, but at least it'd be safer. Ewan's knuckles whitened as he gripped the side of his mug. Charlie was a close enough friend, but debating him was exhausting. Charlie, if you want to stay at home because it's safe, what's the point in fighting this war at all? If you want me to raid this health centre blind, I want a better reason than that. Ewan huffed, unsure whether Charlie was objecting for sensible reasons or just to be argumentative. He was capable of both, but he had spent most of his Oakenfold years doing the latter. Even when he had seriously good points, staff members had been less than willing to listen to the ideas of a short, argumentative teenager. Ewan glanced to the far side of the kitchen table, where Jack, I love Jack, leant against the wall with his eyes to the ceiling. Jack had left the discussion minutes ago to twirl his fingers through his dishevelled, greasy hair, perhaps bored with the bickering, or daydreaming again, even at 17. Let me make things nice and clear for you, Charlie, Ewan began. Tonight we saw a human, an actual, real-life human, outside the walls of our nearest citadel. We also got to see Keith Tyler's phone, which gave away the exact location of the place he was taking her to. Do I need to tell you how big an opportunity this is? All right, let me make things nice and clear for you, started Charlie, his voice wavering. Ewan bit his lip. He would need to tread carefully. Charlie's anger and Ewan's demand avoidance would be an explosive cocktail. Ewan, you're asking us to go to this place without knowing anything about it. We have no idea how many clones are there, no idea what they're guarding, no idea whether it's even important, and no idea who Lieutenant Lambourne is. Screw that. Ewan let out a sigh and drummed his fingers on the dirty kitchen table. He was almost prepared to admit that Charlie was right, but couldn't bring himself to believe his own views were wrong. Pardon me for pointing out the obvious, offered Jack, sweeping his dishevelled hair from his eyes. But can't we just wait for Shannon to start talking? Then we won't have to trek all the way to Hartford to find anything out. Who says she'll even talk? Asked Ewan. She's been here for like 2 hours. Give her a moment. Besides, she's in good hands. McCormick's got warmth and kindness pouring out of every part of his body. What, every part? Asked Charlie with a grin. Kate barged into the kitchen, wide-eyed and open-mouthed. Wordless, she approached the table and shoved a crumpled piece of paper into Ewan's hands. Ewan didn't know how to react to the words on the page. 2 facts were immediately obvious. The paper was an up-to-date list of the Underdogs, and it had been printed from a Citadel computer. But Ewan struggled to combine those 2 facts. The universes of New London and Spitfire's Rise did not slot together in his mind. Oh, bloody hell, he thought. It mentions my PDA. Ewan? Asked Jack. Ewan turned the paper around for his friends to see, with a finger covering his diagnosis. His friend's shock was predictable. McCormick's Underdogs were no longer anonymous. Where did you get this? He asked. Shannon's pocket, Kate said with a hesitant gulp. Before Ewan could even process the information, Charlie was heading for the door. Charlie, wait a second, said Kate. Wait for what? Where the hell do you think that list came from? Shannon's pocket, said Jack. Originally, you idiot. That's got Nicholas Grant written all over it. It's got our names written all over it. Jack, do you think this is a joke or something? I think you're overreacting, said Jack. He started to flick his thumb across his fingers again, like he always did when he was thinking. He called it stimming, his way of stimulating his brain when he needed to think straight. She's blatantly not one of Grant's agents. I mean, there's at least 2 things you're not thinking about. Ewan checked the door. Jack had Charlie's full attention. It was a famous ability of Jack's. His brain had the capacity to think of ideas that never occurred to anyone else, at the cost of missing the really obvious stuff. He may have been the ultimate Asperger's oddball with the worst hair on planet Earth, but his ideas were always worth listening to. First off, Jack started, she killed Keith Tyler. Remember that? Ewan cracked a smile. He was still forgetting that fact once every few minutes, and it felt good every time he was reminded. She did it to gain our trust, spat Charlie. Yeah, it'd be a good strategy, said Jack. But why sacrifice such a big guy for it? Why not just make her kill a bunch of clones or look like she saved our lives somehow? I'm pretty sure the great Keith Tyler wouldn't agree to a plan that would cost him his life. Ewan nodded. Charlie didn't answer, which was probably a win for Jack. And secondly, Jack continued, stopping his finger flicking to point to the paper, she brought the list here with her. You'd be hard-pressed to find a bad guy stupid enough to do that. If she were an enemy, she would have got rid of that list the moment she saw you. She may have been a little bit distracted at the time, said Charlie. Do you really think spies walk around with study notes in their pockets? If I'd been given a list like that, I'd have memorised it and destroyed it straight away. Not everyone has your epic memory, Jack. Whatever. There's no good reason why an enemy would walk in here with our names in her pocket. We need an explanation for it, sure, but... Kate let out a gasp. By the time Ewan had looked up, Charlie had stormed out of the kitchen. Well, that's just great, muttered Ewan. He ran for the door, possibly spilling his drink on the way, but not being bothered enough to check. He bolted through the house, hoping against the odds that he would find Shannon before Charlie did. He tried to predict where she had reached on McCormick's grand tour of Spitfire's Rise, but stopped when he realised something unnerving. They kept their armoury downstairs, down in the wine cellar next to the house's hidden underground exit. As well as that exit, there were 2 other tunnels, one leading to their farm, which occupied the bottom floor of next door's house, and the other leading to their makeshift generator room. If McCormick had taken Shannon to either of them, she would be trapped once Charlie reached the armoury. Ewan ran down the cellar stairs and glanced around. The bookshelves across the concrete floor were packed with combat weapons, set out like a firearms supermarket. Bladed weapons, handguns, assault rifles, helmets, handy non-combat tools such as binoculars, and a healthy supply of long-range radios. The remaining wine, of course, was kept away from the more dangerous items. Next to the memorial wall, Charlie stood with a pistol already in his hands. "Jack's full of crap," Charlie said. He knows that's not true. His impulses are getting the better of him. As evidenced by the gun in his hand, I guess. There was no faulting Charlie's enthusiasm. There never had been. But his enthusiasm did not always point in the right directions. "Charlie, what exactly are you planning to do?" "Get some answers." "By scaring a girl who's already too terrified to speak?" Charlie opened his mouth, but he was cut off by an opening door. Alex emerged from the tunnel to the generator room and froze in place at the sight of Charlie's weapon. Did I catch you at a bad time?" he asked, his deep voice a few notes higher than usual. "Alex," said Ewan, "find McCormick. Tell him to—" But it was too late. McCormick wandered through the tunnel door after Alex with a quivering Shannon in tow. Ewan had expected screams, but instead he found silence. Charlie raised his weapon. Shannon cowered. McCormick placed himself in front of her. Alex shuffled to one side, irritated at being on generator duty at just the wrong moment, and vanished back down the tunnel. "Charlie," said McCormick, "talk to me." "She's a bloody spy. We have proof." Ewan checked Shannon's face in an attempt to read her reactions, but doubted he'd do a good job of it. In front of her, McCormick looked concerned but not panicked. "And do you think that gun will help matters?" McCormick asked. "Shut up, you hypocrite. You lead an army. Ewan, show him what's in your hand." Ewan looked down. He had forgotten the list was still in his grip. With a sigh, he unfolded the paper and handed it to McCormick. The man's expression grew even more concerned, but there was still no worry in his face. Shannon, however, had turned pure white, like Kate during a panic attack. "It's up to date," said Ewan. "It's even got Daniel down as being dead. What was that, 3 weeks ago?" "We didn't even know for sure he was dead," he thought. "He just went missing on a raid. Nice way of having the news broken." "You try telling me that's not from New London," shouted Charlie. McCormick gave the armoury a 5-second silence and turned around. "Are you okay, Shannon?" he asked. Ewan had to stop his jaw from falling open. Charlie did not stop his own. Shannon gave no response, her eyes fixed on the gun held by an impulsive 15-year-old. "Charlie," said McCormick, "nothing good will come from you holding that. Stop and think." "I am thinking. Far more than you." "If you were thinking," said McCormick with a smile, "you'd have remembered that the guns here are empty. The bullets are locked away." The look on Charlie's face would have been priceless if so much weren't at stake. He shook the pistol up and down as if trying to gauge its weight, and then lobbed it across the armoury where it clattered against the shotguns. "Take a moment, mate," Ewan said. "He's right. There's a way of sorting this, but it has to be cleverer than that." Charlie stared at his best friend and offered no words. A scornful stare, but nothing unexpected. The tunnel door reopened and Alex re-entered the cellar, apparently feeling safe to do so now the pistol was gone. "Ewan," he asked, as if his vanishing act had never took place, "what happened to the good old days? Back when you guys were the temper twins. You and him, peas in a pod, setting each other off, exploding together. Now you just calm him down all the time. Did you grow up and stop having fun or something?" "Not the time, Alex." "You do realise Charlie just cancelled out a whole night of McCormick's people-building magic?" Alex asked, ignorant of Shannon's position right next to him. "Alex, shut up," yelled Charlie, "or I'll ram your teeth so far down your throat you'll need a toothbrush for your—" "Take a walk, Charlie," barked Ewan. Charlie's face shot back towards him with widening eyes. "Seriously," Ewan finished. "Now's the time to walk away. Don't you ever speak to me like a child. I'm giving you advice. Walk away and find a quiet room. This isn't how we do things." "I don't care!" "That's funny," said Alex. "You seem to be not caring very loudly." Charlie vanished before Ewan could breathe another word. Stomping as loudly as he could across the cellar's concrete floor, he marched to the stairs and slammed an open palm against the wall with as much noise as he could manage. "What's his problem?" asked Alex. "Oh yeah, forgot for a second." "Give him time," said McCormick. "We'll get the real him back." "You know, word for word, that's exactly what you say every time he does this." "And I'm always right." Ewan gave half a smile and chose to ignore McCormick's clumsy wording. Charlie's difficulties were very much a part of the real him, even if they weren't part of the karma him. But Ewan appreciated what the old man was trying to mean. Most days are swap with Charlie, though, he thought. People spent years believing ADHD just meant bad behaviour. I wouldn't mind being seen as badly behaved, rather than violent or just plain evil. "Shannon," McCormick repeated. "Are you okay?" Shannon took a string of long breaths, tears filling her eyes. She gave no response. Ewan walked up to her with his softest footsteps and did his best to sound sympathetic. "Charlie's not a bad guy," he started. "He's just worried." I don't blame him, to be fair. We want to keep you safe, Shannon, but you have to let us know what that list is about. Ewan looked to McCormick, as if for approval, but the man's eyes were fixed on Shannon. One of his eyes lay on her his eyes were fixed on Shannon. One of his hands if one of his eyes lay on her shoulder, that would be quite odd. One of his hands lay on her shoulder, although it didn't seem to calm her down. Ewan turned around and headed for the stairs out of the cellar. His temper twin needed calming down, and sooner was better than later. I can destroy the clones, Shannon said. The sentence was followed by a lingering silence, as Ewan turned around to find McCormick and even Alex speechless. Every last one, she whispered, her eyes fixed to the ground. Just hide me. There was no intonation in her voice. Ewan couldn't even make out an accent. How? He asked. Do we have a deal? Shannon, we need to know about that list, about whether we're safe. Shannon kept her face lowered. Her faint words did not even bother to echo off the cellar walls. Every last clone, dead. And you keep me a secret, no questions asked. That's the deal. That's the end of Chapter 3. Right, Chapter 4 will follow very quickly, but if anyone has any questions, comments or anything, feel free to ask them now, just while I take a drink of water. And yeah, once again, I'm seeing a bunch of names are recognised in the list of people who are watching. So thank you very much for joining in. And little something that always makes me smile when you look at when you look at a post and you see all the different reacts, and just occasionally there's a post where the heart reacts outnumber the like reacts. There's something about that just really makes me smile. So yeah, thanks for that, everyone. Anyway, take one more sip of water, and then unless anyone's got anything to ask or comment, then I'll read you Chapter 4. Okay. Chapter 4. A few hours ago, she was cowering in the clinic with Lorraine and Kate. Now she's leading a strike team meeting. Either she's braver than anyone I've ever met, or she seriously wants something. Ewan cast an eye over the living room sofas. 7 people were present, including Shannon, but it didn't feel crowded. Back when Spitfire's Rise held 30-something freedom fighters, it had been much harder to find a spot on the sofa. McCormick sat next to Shannon, as expected. They were joined by most of the strike team from the evening's aborted mission: Kate, Alex, Jack, and Silent Simon. Charlie was missing, still collecting himself somewhere. Shannon, started McCormick, we're listening. Shannon's gaze had not lifted from her bandaged feet since they'd left the armory, and her voice would not rise above a whisper. All of New London's clones will die, and you'll keep me a secret. No questions asked. Deal? For the last time, deal, said Alex. When nobody else spoke, Shannon looked around. Ewan nodded in her direction, but she remained silent until everyone else had nodded too. She even looked at Silent Simon for his reaction, staring into his face until she got the eventual nod. That surprised Ewan. People tended to ignore Simon, or ask others for opinions on his behalf, thinking that those with Down syndrome were incapable of self-advocacy. Ewan wanted to believe that Shannon was one of those rare people who understood special needs, but he knew deep down that she just wanted to be 100% sure of everyone's compliance. There's a kill switch for the clone factory, Shannon began, to shut it down in case of emergencies. It's somewhere on floor F. Why would Grant ever shut down his own factories? Asked Kate. Everything needs a failsafe, said Jack, starting his finger-flicking stim again. Even spaceships have self-destruct mechanisms. And Grant wouldn't create an army of clones without giving himself the last word, in case they go haywire or something. Go on, Shannon. It's like stopping the press on a newspaper, she whispered. It halts clone production until someone flips the switch back. But I know how to stop it forever. How do you know all this? Asked Ewan. No questions asked. Ewan bit his lip. He had never been good with leaps of faith. Trust was good, but knowledge was better. Do we at least get to know how to do it? Asked Alex. Once you've flipped the kill switch, you use a tool that my friend made. What friend? No questions asked. Ewan disguised an exasperated sigh. Alex didn't bother. Jack tried to hide his frustration, but didn't do it well. Simon followed his usual habit of gazing at everyone else's faces for instructions on how to react. It had been easy to forget Simon was even in the room, and not just because of his silence. At every school Ewan had ever been sent to, in every class he had ever endured, there were kids who almost weren't there. It took extra effort to remember their names, and their absence was rarely noticed when they fell ill. Silent Simon was only the exception because of his Down syndrome, a condition that was almost literally written across his face. People looked at Simon and saw his condition before his personality. Most barely recognised he could even have a personality and a disability at the same time. His selective muteness didn't help either. It left the door wide open for other people's assumptions to define him. That's what adults think of selective mutes. If you don't talk, you must be stupid. Even without Down syndrome, Simon never had a shot at mainstream to begin with. So, we need the tool and we need to get to the kill switch, said Kate. You've got the tool with you, right? It's with Keith. Ewan leaned backwards into the sofa and stared at the cracks in the ceiling. His first reaction was annoyance at the thought of walking all the way back to Sandridge just to raid Keith Tyler's dead body. His second was frustration. Earlier that evening, he had been meters from a tool that could destroy the clone factory, only to walk home without it. His third reaction was surprise, upon realising that Shannon had called Tyler by his first name. How well did you know each other before you stabbed the life out of him? It's in his backpack, she continued. If he knew what it was, he'd have destroyed it. But once you have it, you go to floor F, the sixth highest story. We know the alphabet, said Jack. Most of them do anyway, added Alex. Then you use the failsafe and switch off the clone factory. While it's down, you use the tool and kill it forever. What kind of tool is it? Asked Jack. Some kind of grenade, or no questions asked, Shannon whispered. I'll tell you what it is when I know I'm safe. You are safe, Shannon, said McCormick unexpectedly. Ewan was pretty sure it was the man's first sentence since the beginning. While everyone else had been interrupting and asking questions, a lifetime's experience of guiding people had taught McCormick that listening was more useful than talking. It was an art that Ewan was trying for himself, but found surprisingly difficult. Not to be pedantic, said Alex, but the deal involved us killing every clone, not just the factory. Clones only live for 4 months. By August, they'll all be gone. By August, they'll have brought in reinforcements from New Reading. Take it or leave it. Without warning, Shannon stood up and headed for the door. Before anyone could raise an eyebrow in surprise, her footsteps were sounding on the stairs. Wow, for a traumatised girl, she's bloody uncompromising. Ewan, said McCormick with a reserved expression. You're head soldier. What are you thinking? Ewan was caught between the comfort of getting to call the shots and the discomfort of being forced to call them. But once he had dealt with the conflict, the decision was easy. Wars were never won by staying at home. Screw it, he said. Let's at least go back to Sandridge and see if the tool exists. If Shannon doesn't feel like talking when we're there, we'll come home. Sounds sensible, said McCormick. Same team? Yeah, answered Ewan, rising to his feet. Let's keep it simple. Simple, he thought to himself as he left the room. Getting Charlie to do stuff is never simple. Ewan hopped up the stairs and was 3 feet from the boy's bedroom when the door opened next to his face. Raj walked out with uncomfortable eyes, trying to hide his obvious feelings until the bedroom door closed behind him. Raj Singh, the lad who spent half his life talking about God, although the others weren't quite sure which religion he actually followed, and the other half showing off the positives of being dyslexic, was pretty clever for a guy who could barely read, but probably not as clever as he thought he was. In the last few minutes he had probably done his usual thing, poked his nose into someone's business and tried to solve a problem beyond his capability. He's in there, said Raj. I'm not keen on talking. I wish I hadn't asked now. Give me a few minutes with him. Good luck with that, mate. It's never luck. But thanks. Raj forged a smile and headed down the stairs as fast as he could manage. Drawing a deep breath, Ewan brushed the door open. Charlie was crying. Ewan sunk his eyes. Just like Oakenfold again, Ewan thought. Even with a nice big staff team, it was usually me sorting him out. This is my room too, Charlie said bluntly. So get the hell out. Is that what you said to Raj? Get the hell out? No, he chose to leave. Doesn't matter what I said. Ewan took a seat next to Charlie's sleeping bag. On any other day he'd have waited for calm, but tonight he didn't have time. The strike team would be gone in 15 minutes, and Charlie deserved an opportunity to change his mind. Sorry, water. He looked at his friend on the floor, knees tucked up to his chest and trembling. 4 days away from his 16th birthday, he still looked like a short, problematic schoolchild. "Talk to me, Charlie." "You don't trust me," he yelled, his speech interspersed with hiccups and sniffs. "You tell me I'm useless." "I've never said that in my life, and you know it." "But you take McCormick's side every time, you let Alex take the mick, but you send me to my room like a naughty little boy. Even Thomas gets treated more like a grown-up than I do, and I hate—" Charlie's words trailed off, and he finished his sentence by thumping a clenched fist against the dusted carpet. Even then, he could not claim to hate his friends. He turned his head away from Ewan, either too angry or embarrassed to reveal his face. Did I used to look like this too, Ewan thought, back when we were the Temper Twins? A little part of Ewan didn't hate the label anymore. It had a brotherly feel to it. "Charlie, you're not going to believe what Shannon said after you left." Yeah, as if she spoke. She couldn't beat Simon in a karaoke contest. Humour, that's a good step. Charlie had begun to steady his breathing. His mood was far from normal, but the physical side of his meltdown had faded. It was time for Ewan to make a decision. Was Charlie useful on the battleground? Without question. He had saved enough lives in the past. Did his behaviour affect the mood of the team? Sometimes. Did his outbursts put himself or others in danger? Not so far. With so few soldiers left, Ewan couldn't afford to be selective. His friend was coming. "Mate, we're going out again. What would you say if I invited you along?" "I'll tell you to leave me the hell alone." It'd be like these last few minutes never happened. "And I'd still tell you to leave me the hell alone." Years of experience told Ewan that his friend was only refusing in order to make a point, one he would regret the moment the squad left without him. This isn't getting me anywhere. Time to put my magic to use. Ewan reached into his brain and replaced friendship mode with manipulation mode. He stopped short of, this is Ewan thinking, he stopped short of telling me he hates us. That's the line he doesn't want to cross. I'll use that. We'll leave you the hell alone then, and when one of us is gunned down and you aren't there to protect them, we'll be sure to remember it's all because you hate us. Charlie spun his head back to Ewan, offence spread from one end of his face to the other. "No, I don't." "You do. You're just not admitting it. You guys are idiots at times, but I don't hate you." Pity you won't be able to tell us that while you're stuck at home and the rest of us are getting shot for you. If any of us die, we'll die believing that you hate... Then screw you all. They can believe what they want. He's getting defiant. He can defy me too while he's at it. People always believe what they want, Charlie. Shame we won't get a chance to prove them wrong either. See you in a few days. Sod that, I'm coming too. You're not, Charlie. Try and stop me. Charlie leaped up to find the shoes he had kicked against the wall, and Ewan hid the smile that tried to emerge on his face. As Charlie readied himself for combat at a speed only he could manage, Ewan walked to the bedroom door and paused halfway out. Now that Charlie was determined to join the strike team again, no force on earth could stop him. Ewan could afford to reach back into his brain and become Charlie's friend again. "By the way," he said, "we all know about your anger problems, our anger problems, but yeah, thanks. No, listen to me. We all know about them, but that's all we see them as. Anger problems, nothing more. Not part of your personality, not even part of the ADHD. You remember the Oakenfold Code, right?" Charlie nodded. It had never been an official school rule, but the teenagers had all agreed to it. The problems are not the person. Exactly. Kate's got enormous anxiety on top of her autism, but none of us care. In a positive way, I mean. Raj's dyslexia means he can barely read, but it doesn't change how we feel about him. Same with you. Alex called you angry guy earlier because he's an ignorant numpty who doesn't know any better. But even Thomas trusts you, so you must be doing something right. Charlie let out a smile. One that was reluctant but real. "Thanks," he replied. "Oh, and when you get downstairs, say sorry to Raj for me. He'll know why. Say it yourself. It'll mean more." Ewan slipped through the door to the landing to find the lower half of McCormick's body descending a ladder. The ageing man did not see Ewan until his feet rested on the floor of the landing. "Just checking for rats," he said, lifting the mobile ladder until it slid back into the attic and closing the trapdoor above him. "Checking for rats like you do every time you leave the house?" It was an unusual sight, seeing Dr. Joseph McCormick vulnerable. He gave Ewan a nervous look, but said nothing. "Your secret's safe with me," said Ewan, trying to imitate McCormick's own smile and warmth. "Yeah, you're not meant to understand what that bit's about yet, but, well, give it some time." Beside the memorial wall, Ewan performed a quick head count. Charlie, Alex, Jack, Silent Simon. Nearly everyone. Kate? He asked. Farm, answered Jack. Ewan headed for the left-hand tunnel and opened the wooden door, then walked along the underground path between Spitfire's Rise and the neighbouring house. From the outside, Spitfire's Rise looked like a typical wealthy person's countryside cottage, with white-painted bricks, black-painted wooden beams, and an elegant slate roof, as if some former owners had tried to imitate the old-fashioned Tudor look. There's no way an outside observer could see the carefully planned interior, and least of all the underground tunnels which connected Spitfire's Rise with two other houses, one used for growing their food, the other for generating their electricity. Funny thing is, there actually is a building somewhere in Hertfordshire in my head that actually is Spitfire's Rise. The people in that village don't know that my novel is set there, and well, the owners of the house have never spoken to them, obviously, but just in my head, that is the village, and that's Spitfire's Rise. And because it's a closely guarded secret in the novel series, it's a closely guarded secret in real life as well. But it will take an extremely clever person to work out where it is based on the information in the novels. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've not actually put enough in there to completely give the game away. Anyway, a stepladder at the far end poked up through next door's floorboards, revealing their makeshift farm spread across the ground floor. The beginnings of fresh vegetables were emerging on the soil surface, well lit by the searing hot lights hung not far above them. That's true. Julie has asked me so many times where Spitfire's Rise is, and yeah, I'm keeping completely silent. Ewan climbed up into the farm. Kate, Raj and Thomas were stood on the plank pathways across the soil, poking their gloved fingers through the soil for edible plants. Kate, said Ewan, can we borrow you? You can keep her if you want, cried Thomas. Raj, give him a slap for me, said Kate with a laugh. Raj hunched his shoulders and marched towards Thomas, but his friendly expression gave him away and Thomas didn't budge. Instead, Raj ruffled his hair and wandered away, leaving the boy to pick out the globs of soil from his head. I'm sure he loves you really, said Raj. Yeah, said Thomas. Love you too, Kate. Ah, shut it. Ewan began to wonder who the real children were in this ragtag group of survivors, but it was always good to see Kate as her happier self. Thomas, could you go with Ewan for a sec? She asked. Just need a moment alone with Raj before I go. Thomas leapt his way across the farm and threw his arms around Kate's waist. You're not escaping without one of these, though, he said. Okay, fine, said Kate, planting a brief kiss on the top of his head. Just stay out of trouble. Ha, yeah, right. Thomas released Kate and leapt down the stepladder. Ewan followed and let Thomas lead the way towards the armoury. What's she doing with Raj? The boy answered. No idea, answered Ewan. Hope she hurries up, though. That's the funny thing, Ewan has actually no idea why Kate wants to spend some time alone with Raj. He's really, really unperceptive. Every time he walked into the cellar, Ewan felt more grateful that they had stolen so much army equipment in the war's early days. His father's raid on the obliterated barracks had helped the family stand their ground on takeover day. Not that it had worked. But Ewan's return after the purges had ended had turned McCormick's clan from survivors to soldiers. Unlike his other teammates in black and camouflage with matching helmets, Simon was wearing a hoodie and jeans, a clear sign he was uncomfortable with joining the strike team twice in one night. There'd be 5 of them going back to Sandridge, not 6. Simon looked at Ewan and opened his mouth, but closed it again when he looked around and remembered others were in the room. He used his hands to communicate words in a type of sign language Ewan had never learned, but the meaning was clear. Simon felt guilty for letting the team down and was trying to apologise. It's fine, Simon, don't worry. You'll be just as useful with McCormick. Silent Simon in the communications building. Not the most practical decision ever. But Simon would be in good company. McCormick could always be relied on to lead the comms unit, since his age and a cyst in his abdomen put him out of combat. Right, said Charlie, bored of waiting. Weapons. Telescopic handgun, Alex's voice boomed, as he dashed his hand to the shelf he had stood himself next to. First come, first served, guys. Whatever, said Ewan. If you need a telescope to help you hit a target, have it. Nothing beats the assault rifle. Ewan chose the one with the discreet knife marks on the handle. He had put it there himself, to guarantee he had the same reliable weapon each time. Then he picked up the rucksack full of technological goodies, still full from their first outing, and slung it over his shoulder. So where's the old man? asked Jack, after sweeping his hair from his eyes to look for himself. "You're only as old as you feel," came McCormick's voice from the top of the cellar stairs, "which makes you the oldest and youngest here." "I'm 17. "Yes," said McCormick, with a childlike obsession with dinosaurs and old-school video games, and a vocabulary even more advanced than mine. "Jack, I'm amazed by your ability to be a child and an elderly man at the same time." Ewan covered his mouth to hide a smirk. There was something about McCormick's grandfatherly charm that allowed him to take the mick out of his soldiers without losing any of his warmth. He directed his team towards the giant slab of stone mounted to the wall, and took a meditative breath. "Let us begin." "Do we have to?" asked Charlie. "We did this a few hours ago, the first time we left." "We're not ignoring them, Charlie." McCormick held out his arms. He, Ewan, and their 5 friends grabbed one another's wrists, and stood in a neatly formed semicircle around the memorial wall. There were 20 names chiselled into the flat rock. From Sarah Best, who had shared Ewan's maths and science classes, caught by a band of clones in a supermarket food raid just days after the takeover, to the trio who had died seizing the electricity generator with Jack. From Beth Foster, the late mother of Thomas, to Daniel Amopoulos, the stone still rough and unworn around his name. "To honour those who gave everything they had," McCormick said to the memorial wall, "we will give everything we have. To honour the dead, we will free the living, united by our differences." "United," came the crowd's reply. That's the end of chapter 4. So yeah, 4 chapters in, and they're straight out onto the main mission of the novel. I prefer to try getting into the action relatively quickly. And okay, checking the comments now, and Beth is trying to find the location of Spitfire's Rise, and yeah, I'm grateful that people loved the novel enough to actually start doing the research about it. At the same time, I'm also kind of glad that you can't work it out yet. There are a few other kind of geographical clues in the sequel, but again, I don't believe there's enough to completely work it out, so I might panic a bit if someone does. Anyway, any further comments before I say goodbye for another day? I'd like to say thank you for everyone that's tuned in. Really, I've not got that much more to say, but by the way, if you're just coming across this video, no problem, Ronnie. If you're just coming across this video, or in fact, if you're watching this video after it stopped being live, feel free to post comments anyway, because I'll be checking the comments throughout the evening just to see if anyone's just caught up. And yeah, I'll answer anything I see. In the meantime, I'm pretty sure I saw Julie posting links to where you can find, the audiobook and links to where you can get it. And other than that, feel free to join the actual Facebook page for Underdogs. There's a link here in the comments. And I think that's it. I think I'm just basically talking for the sake of talking now. But thank you to those who have listened to the first 4 chapters, and I hope you enjoy the other 24 that are coming over the next 2 weeks. All right, take care, everyone. Bye.